In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make sourdough pretzel bites. They're salty, delicious, easy to make, and they're the perfect appetizer. Start by putting 225 grams of water in your mixing bowl, then add 100 grams of active and risen sourdough starter. I made this the night before by taking 25 grams of sourdough starter out of my fridge, feeding it 50 grams of water, 50 grams of flour, and then the next morning it had risen to double in size and it was ready to use in my dough. So put 100 grams of sourdough starter into your mixing bowl. Then take whatever starter is left in the jar and put it back into your fridge until the next time you want to bake. Then give the starter a stir in the mixing bowl just to dissolve the starter into the water. And then add 450 grams of bread flour. I'm using King Arthur bread flour. Next, add 10 grams of salt. I'm using kosher salt, but you could use sea salt or any plain salt. And stir the salt into the flour. And then mix the dough together for about a minute or two with a spoon. This is a very dry dough at 55% hydration, so it's going to be hard to get rid of all those dry clumps of flour. But after a minute or two of mixing, you should get rid of most of the dry flour, and your dough will look something like this. At this point, turn your dough out onto an unfloured surface on your kitchen counter and knead for about 5 minutes just to bring the dough together into a ball. If you don't like kneading very much, just think of this time as a way to pick up all those dry bits of dough off of the counter with the dough ball. Press the dough into the counter with your hands, little by little, slowly picking up all those dry bits of dough off of the counter, and after about 5 minutes of kneading, your dough ball should hold together and be slightly tacky to the touch. Now just plop your dough back on the counter, cover it up, and let your dough rest for 10 minutes. The 10-minute rest should have allowed the gluten in the dough to relax, and now the pretzel dough will be better able to absorb 2 tablespoons of butter. That's right, there's one more ingredient that we need to add to this dough. 2 tablespoons of butter that are going to bring some softness and richness to the dough. So press down the dough with your fingertips to flatten it, and then get out 2 tablespoons of softened butter. I just allowed this salted butter to soften on my countertop at room temperature overnight, and now it's perfectly soft but not greasy and able to be pressed down into this dough. To add the butter, start by pressing it down in one single layer on top of the dough, and then dimple the butter into the dough with your fingertips, and then stretch and fold the butter into the dough so all the butter is locked inside of the dough like this. Now you're going to knead this dough by hand for about 8 minutes. And this process is going to get a little bit messy because the butter is going to cause the dough to start falling apart and then it'll come back together again. If you've ever seen my sourdough brioche video where I made brioche by hand, you'll know that kneading butter into an already kneaded dough is a little bit messy, but it's worth it in the end because the gluten in the dough remains strong. I won't get into all the science behind that because I don't understand it fully myself, but basically kneading the butter into the dough in the case of these pretzels is going to give us pretzels that are chewy but still buttery. That's all we need to know really. So as you knead this dough for about 8 minutes, you're going to go through 3 different stages. At first, the dough is going to become greasy and start to fall apart, and it's going to leave a layer of greasy butter on the counter. But as you knead the dough, you'll be able to start picking up that butter and absorbing it back into the dough. And then you'll enter stage 2. As the dough starts to absorb the butter, you'll start noticing a layer of floury, doughy substance on the counter. Instead of butter and grease on the counter, it'll be floury, doughy stuff. I don't really know how to describe it. This just means that the kneading process is working and the butter is being absorbed by the flour in the dough and everything is becoming one. As you use a bench scraper to scrape that floury substance back into the dough and you keep kneading for a few more minutes, slowly all that floury substance will disappear and you'll enter stage 3. Stage 3 means your kitchen counter is clean, your dough is holding together, and all you need to do is keep kneading until your 8-minute timer goes off. Then take your dough, shape it into a ball with your hands, and transfer it to an oiled glass bowl with an airtight lid, and then let it rest on your counter and rise at room temperature for about 6 to 8 hours, or until it doubles in size like this. At this point, you're ready to cut up and divide your dough into little bite-sized pretzel bite pieces. So take the dough out of the bowl, transfer it onto your kitchen counter, press it down with your fingertips until you form a flat square of dough, and then using a bench scraper or a chef's knife, divide the dough into 8 equally sized pieces, or as equal as you can make them. Each piece of dough can be rolled out and then cut into 10 pretzel bites, so in total you'll get 80 pretzel bites out of this recipe. Take one of the rectangular pieces of dough and fold in the long ends and start rolling out the dough until it makes a long strip that's about 1 inch in thickness. Once you've got all 8 strips laid out, get a bench scraper or chef's knife and cut them into 10 pieces each, and then you'll have 80 bite-sized pretzel bites. Arrange the pieces of dough on a metal baking sheet lined with parchment paper, and now they're ready to rise. Cover the baking sheet up with a kitchen towel or a sheet of oiled plastic wrap and let the pretzel bites rise for an hour and a half to 2 hours at room temperature. 30 minutes before the pretzel bites are done rising, preheat your oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. Then immediately start preparing the baking soda water bath that you'll use to brush on top of your pretzel bites. Put a pan on top of your stove and set it to high heat. Add 1 cup of water to the pan and bring that water up to a boil. Once the water is boiling, turn the heat off and add 2 teaspoons of baking soda, not baking powder, to the pan. Stir it around with a wooden spoon or a whisk until it's thoroughly mixed into the water. Traditionally, pretzels are dipped in a lye solution, which causes them to brown when they're baking in the oven. For this recipe, I'm using a baking soda solution, and even though it doesn't give you the exact same result, at least baking soda won't burn your hands, and you've probably already got it in your fridge somewhere. Once the baking soda solution is mixed, uncover your pretzel bites and apply the baking soda solution with a pastry brush. Brushing the dough thoroughly with this solution will achieve maximum browning on all of the pretzel bites. I probably didn't brush these as thoroughly as I should have, because as you'll see, there are going to be some pale spots on my pretzel bites when they come out of the oven, so brush yours as thoroughly as possible if you want maximum browning. Then top all of the pretzel bites with your favorite coarse salt, and they are ready to bake. Place the baking sheet into the middle rack of your preheated oven and bake for 20 minutes at 450 degrees Fahrenheit. 20 minutes later, these sourdough pretzel bites are golden brown and ready to serve. You can let them cool down for about 5 minutes, that's all you'll need, but if someone's hungry and waiting, it's time to eat. These pretzel bites are best enjoyed with your favorite dipping sauce, melted cheese, mustard, or even this beer cheese recipe that I whipped up. The pretzels are salty and crunchy on the outside, but soft and buttery on the inside. They're truly an amazing sourdough appetizer. If you want to make these, you can find the written recipe on my website, and if you want this beer cheese recipe, just let me know. I'll see you in the next video.
It was amazing. Daddy, we can eat them now.